Like I said, today we're doing, the theme of tonight is mindfulness of the body, and that's part of a series that we've started at Dharma Night. So on Dharma Night we normally have kind of a series of between 4 to 8 evenings, and this topic at the moment is living with awareness. So this is based on this book here, Living with Awareness by Sanghadharin. And we're going to be kind of unpacking the different aspects of it. So if you were interested, you could get this from the bookshop and go more deeply into it along with it. But we're going to be looking at an aspect of that today, of mindfulness of the body. So this text here, the Living with Awareness, it's based on a sutta, which is a teaching from the time of the Buddha. So this is kind of a record of the Buddha's words, the historical Buddha's words. And it's a teaching called the Satipatthana Sutta. It's the Satipatthana Sutta. And this is basically where the Buddha taught about mindfulness and awareness. So it's a really important sutta for the Buddhist tradition, but also over the last kind of 50 or 60 years, kind of secular mindfulness has become very popular, and kind of more and more people are doing meditation through different forms, kind of with apps or classes and stuff like that. And a lot of that teaching is based on the Satipatthana Sutta. So if you've done any sort of mindfulness in kind of a more secular setting, that will probably draw largely on parts of the Satipatthana Sutta. And it's the basis for practices like the mindfulness of breathing. So if you've ever done any sort of mindfulness of breathing, either with us or elsewhere, this is normally kind of the root of that. So Sanghadharin's book, Living with Awareness, goes into that. But what he does in the book is he kind of looks at the whole Buddhist path, kind of the whole path of transforming the mind in the direction of freedom, in the direction of liberation from suffering, through the perspective of awareness. So it's kind of the whole path, but through cultivating awareness, cultivating mindfulness. And this is very traditional. So there's a quote from the Satipatthana Sutta that I'll read out, which is from the Buddha. And when talking about mindfulness, he says, "This is the direct path for purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, the realization of nirvana, namely the 4 foundations of mindfulness." So it's the path for purification, and in this context, purification means kind of the transformation of unskillful or unhelpful mental states. So the mental states that make us suffer and make other people suffer is kind of a purification of those. The surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, and the realization of nirvana, which is the goal of the Buddhist path. So over the next few weeks we'll be looking at why awareness is so important, why mindfulness is so important if we're wanting to transform our minds, if we're wanting to move in the direction of growth, why it's so important. And then today we're going to be primarily looking at how we can do that through mindfulness and awareness of the body. So that's what we're going to mainly be looking at. So when we're thinking about awareness, when we're thinking about mindfulness, one of the things is it's really important. One of the reasons why it's so important is because it puts us in touch with our direct experience. So it's experience as it's happening right now. It's not an idea about what's happening. It's not a wish or a fear of something that's happening. It's just the experience that's going on right now, our direct experience. And one of the main ways to do that is through the body. Through the body we can have kind of a close, probably one of the closest contacts we can have of direct experience. And the reason why this is so important is because a lot of the time, pretty much all of the time, there's a conceptual overlay to our experience. So we're having an experience, but a lot of the time we're not in touch with it completely because there's this conceptual overlay. We're kind of having an idea about what should be going on and what shouldn't be going on, where we want it to go, related to what's happened in the past. Why is this happening? I'm really happy this is happening. I hope I can get more of it. All of these sorts of things we kind of overlay on our experience. And what Buddhism says is this leads us to have a complete misreading of what's going on. So on the deepest level, it's not that we're bad or wrong or sinful. It's just that we're misreading what's going on in experience. And through awareness, through mindfulness, we can start to move more in the direction of seeing clearly. So that's what we're trying to do through cultivating awareness, is we're trying to see more clearly, and we're trying to get in touch with direct experience. So the spiritual life, and when I say spiritual life, what I mean is a life committed to growth, a life committed to working on our minds, so that we can move in a positive direction, so we can move in the direction of more awareness, more kindness, more love, more compassion, more wisdom. So that's what I mean when I say spiritual life. And any true spiritual life starts with awareness. So that's the first thing that we need to be cultivating. If we're not cultivating awareness, we're not going to be able to cultivate anything else. It's kind of like the foundational thing for working through the whole path. So it's really important that we are cultivating awareness. And I thought I'd just draw out a particular teaching which I think kind of draws out how important this is. And it's called the 7 Factors of Enlightenment. And basically what this is it's what would happen if we keep on practicing, if we keep on developing our mind. It's the states that we will go through. So it starts off with sati, which is mindfulness, which is clear awareness of what's going on. This is the first thing we need to be cultivating. And then after that, there's Dharma Vichaya, which is investigation into experience. So on the basis of seeing clearly, we can then start to investigate what's going on in our experience. We're not just looking, we're able to kind of investigate and then work skillfully with it. And then there's virya, which is energy or diligence in working on our mind. So we start off with an awareness. We can then, with that awareness, we can investigate what's going on in our experience. And then on that basis, we can then put energy into transforming it. So we'll transform negative mental states into positive mental states, and we'll try and maintain the positive mental states that we're cultivating. And then that goes into piti, which means joy and rapture. So once we've transformed those negative mental states into positive mental states, what arises is joy, is rapture. And then there's passaddhi, which means tranquility. And then samadhi, which is unification of mind. And then finally upekkha, which is equanimity, which is basically a mind that's completely untouched by the world. A mind that's just dwelling in complete peace regardless of what's going on around it. So it's completely untouched. So these are the 7 factors of enlightenment. And in a way, this is what, if we're working on our mind, this is the direction that we're moving in. This is what we're trying to go towards. And what it said is these are kind of like, they're pools of water that are one after each other. And at the top, there's sati, which is mindfulness. And kind of as you fill one up, it starts to spill over into the next one. So as you fill up sati and mindfulness, that spills over into investigation of the mental states. And then as that starts to fill up, that spills over into virya. And then into joy, then into tranquility, then into samadhi, and then into equanimity. There's these pools that kind of fill up as they go down. And the reason why this image is important is because it's emphasizing that what we basically need to do is cultivate awareness. If we put our effort into cultivating awareness at the top, kind of the first pool, if we put our effort into cultivating awareness, the rest kind of naturally happens. So you can see in that image the water fills gradually as it goes down. It's the same with the path. If we cultivate awareness, if we keep on cultivating awareness, we're going to naturally move into those later stages. Joy is going to naturally arise. Tranquility is going to naturally arise if we're doing those things. And it starts with cultivating awareness. So that's kind of why it's so important that we're doing that. And yeah, there's different things. There's different things that we can be aware of, and yeah, throughout the next few weeks, we'll be going into the different aspects. But the first one, the most kind of visceral one that we have, is the body. Yeah, so we start with mindfulness of the body. So in a way, we're kind of starting at the foundations today. This is kind of like the foundation of everything that comes after. Not that it's like a basic or a first step, because in a way you never leave it behind. Mindfulness of the body will carry us all the way through from where we are now up until well beyond enlightenment. There will always be awareness of the body, but it's really important, and that's like where we're starting, because it can all unfold from there. And yeah, so one of the reasons why the body's so important and so helpful, one of the things is it's always there, isn't it? we don't have any experience without the body, so it's something we can always be tuned into. And there's always sensations going on in the body. There's always different things going on. There's different temperatures, there's different moods, there's different energy levels, there's all sorts of different sensations. So it's something that there's always something going on that we can be aware of. And there's always changes to observe as well. One of the big teachings of Buddhism is life is constant change. There's just constantly change going on. And in the body, we can be aware of that change. We can be aware of changes in our experience. And another thing is the body kind of mirrors the mind. I'll talk more about this later, but what we do with, what's going on in our mind will manifest in our body in a certain way, so we can use the body to help us see that. But it also influences the mind as well. What we do with our body has an effect on our mental states. And yeah, there's lots of information coming from the body all the time. In a way, there's so much. I don't quite like the information. It kind of makes it sound a bit like a computer. But in a way, there's just a lot of information coming from the body into our experience, and we can tune in with that, and we can deepen our awareness of it. So in a way, there'll be loads of our experience that we're not registering. Most of the time, there'll be loads of levels of our experience that we're not registering. But as we develop awareness, we can come into, develop awareness of these deeper layers of experience. So yeah, I'm sure you've experienced it. If you've meditated any amount of time, I'm sure you've experienced it where you start off and you feel fairly on the surface, but as you meditate more, it feels like you're going into deeper layers of your mind, deeper layers of your experience. And it's the same with the body. We can come into deeper and deeper layers of our experience of our body and kind of understand it on a deeper and deeper level, or not necessarily understand it, but just see what's going on a deeper and deeper level. And yeah, so as much as we can, we should always be in touch with our body, both in meditation and outside of meditation. So when we're meditating, there's no meditation really where we shouldn't have a strong awareness of the body as kind of an anchor. Because if we're not aware of our body, what normally happens is we'll just go into some alienated kind of thought world, some sort of fantasy world. But really, so even if we're doing, say, for example, Metta Bhavana, if you've done that practice where we're bringing people to mind, even when we're imagining them, we want to be aware of what's going on in the body as well in relation to that, and kind of be observing how that's changing. So yeah, we want to always be aware of the body in meditation, but also outside of meditation. And yeah, I'll talk more about the details of that later. And yeah, there's all any meditation we're doing, we should be in touch with the body. But there's also kind of meditations or practices you can do to develop more awareness of the body. I imagine most people that have done like meditating in some form have done some sort of body scan. So what we're going to do now, we don't normally do this on Monday nights, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a long body scan. So I thought that'd be a good place to start this session, is to do a long body scan. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to guide us through it, and I'm going to do it much more detailed than we'd normally do it. So normally you might say, okay, yeah, be aware of your legs, be aware of your chest, arms. I'm going to do it really detailed. And hopefully what this can do is it can help us bring awareness to different parts of our experience of the body that we're not normally paying attention to. So I said before, there's kind of lots of information, lots of experience going on in the body that we're not normally aware of. What we can try and do here is bring awareness to that. Great. Okay, so yeah, we're now going to start diving into the Satipatthana Sutta, the text that we're looking at. And what I'll do, I'll just start by reading an extract from the original text. So this is the words of the Buddha. Now, when the Buddha was teaching this, he was teaching to a group of monks. So the people that he was talking to were all men in this situation. So he taught all sorts of people. He taught men and women, monks, families, etc. But in this situation, he was talking to men. So he uses, he says he. So kind of sorry if you're having to then change it in your head to account to you, but that's what that's who he's talking to. So he says, again, bhikkhus. And a bhikkhu kind of means a monk. It's kind of the traditional word for monks. That's who he's talking to. But really, it applies to anyone who wants to practice the path. Yeah. So again, bhikkhus. When walking, a bhikkhu understands, I am walking. When standing, he understands, I am standing. When sitting, he understands, I am sitting. When lying down, he understands, I am lying down. Or he understands accordingly, however his body is disposed. A bhikkhu is one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting, who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. Okay, so this is a teaching for how to live outside of meditation. So obviously, yeah, it's important that we're cultivating awareness in meditation, and that will seep out into the rest of our lives. But it's also important that we're trying to cultivate awareness outside of meditation. Now, I think it's important to ask ourselves, do we ever think about it? Do we ever think about being mindful outside of meditation? Do we think about cultivating awareness outside of meditation? So he gave a list of loads of activities, and he said to do them with full awareness. So each of these activities, it's not with a bit of awareness, it's not with parts of ourselves, this is completely aware of what we're doing. So it's walking, standing, sitting, lying down, going forward and back, looking in different directions, extending limbs, wearing clothes, carrying items, eating, drinking, consuming, tasting, defecating, urinating, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. And this is basically a way of saying everything. It's kind of like an elaborate way of saying absolutely everything that we're doing. We need to be bringing as much awareness as we can to it. And I think it's kind of it's easy to think like, okay, yeah, I kind of get that, I can do that. But this is actually an extremely high ideal. It's an extremely lofty thing to actually be aiming towards, to be fully aware when we're doing anything. It's so easy to do something with only part of ourselves, or to kind of do something on autopilot and be thinking about something else. So, yeah, it's kind of just think like, how often are we actually fully aware when we do anything? And the reason why we find it hard to be fully aware when doing stuff is because often our mind is quite fragmented. Yeah, so the mind isn't whole; it's fragmented into these different parts, or it's split into these different things. And a fragmented awareness is basically an awareness that's torn between different things. So we're trying to do multiple things at once, or we're doing something but actually we want to be elsewhere. So we're kind of being pulled in these different directions. So I can think about lots of different things I do where I kind of try and I kind of know I should be just doing one thing, but I kind of feel like I can kind of trick it if I can do more than one thing at a time. So say like I'm eating, I can be like, okay, I'm going to quickly get this bit of reading done, and then neither of them are actually satisfying, and they kind of have this like fragmenting, splitting effect, or kind of like listening to a podcast while doing the washing up, or even at my worst, kind of having conversation with someone, but also kind of checking my phone to see if something else has happened on it. So it's kind of, it's not definitely not my worst, but it's not very good with the person you're talking to. So yeah, there's all of these different things that we do that kind of fragment our awareness, that kind of split our awareness so that we're not fully doing what we're doing. And then another aspect of this, and Sanghadharin, who the founder of this movement, who wrote the book Living with Awareness, he's really strong on this one. He calls it alienated awareness. So it's an awareness that's alienated. So the way that he describes this is it's a kind of cold awareness. It's kind of an awareness that doesn't have any heart in it. It's an awareness that lacks emotional depth. So although there might be kind of a surface level awareness of something that we're doing or something where we are, that it doesn't have that emotional depth to it. It doesn't have that richness. It doesn't have that warmth that when we're doing something with the whole of our being does. I can remember, I work here now. I work in the office upstairs at the London Buddhist Centre, but about 6 months ago I stopped being a primary school teacher, so that was what I did before. And on the whole, I did enjoy it and I got a lot out of it, but there got to a point where I was like, I definitely don't want to be here anymore. I definitely want to work at the Buddhist Centre. And I can really recognise this state of alienated awareness from that time. It was kind of like I'd committed to doing that year. I really wanted to see the year through with those kids. And I wanted to kind of close the cycle of that year. So I did, a part of me wanted to just finish it, but another part of me really didn't want to be there. And I can really recognize this kind of alienated awareness, where it's like I was turning up, I was doing it, but really my emotions weren't in it. I really didn't, a big part of me really didn't want to be there. And it manifested in all sorts of different ways. Kind of, I was really, it was annoying with the computer that I had. It kind of like in the bottom right hand corner, it kind of like had a headline of some news. And it was like, it was so easy for me to be like, oh, I wonder what that is, and then clicking on that and then having a look at the news when I should really be prepping for the next lesson or something. And it was because I wasn't fully there. Because when we're actually fully there, we don't want to be distracted from something. When we're really fully in something, we're not interested in being pulled away. But it's when our heart's not really in what we're doing, when our emotions aren't in what we're doing, it's so easy to be distracted and pulled away from what we're doing. So if we want to have full awareness, we need to have our emotions involved. We need to have our emotions involved in our life and in what we do. And so we have awareness meditations. We have meditations to increase awareness. This is like the mindfulness of breathing and body awareness practices. And these are good for learning to stay focused on one object. But actually, sometimes what we really need is to do meditations that bring our emotions in the picture as well. Because actually, if our emotions aren't fully with what we're doing, just kind of having an even more razor focus on it isn't actually going to help. We kind of need to get more of ourselves on board. So sometimes what we might need to do the metta bhavana. So that's the cultivation of loving kindness. It's kind of like a practice that works on our emotions. So we might need to do a practice like that to get more of us on board. Or we might need to do some sort of devotional practice, or any sort of practice that kind of gets our emotions into our lives as well. So that might be something we need to do. We might need to do meditations to kind of bring our emotions out more. And sometimes we simply just need to simplify our lives. It might be that we're just trying to do too many things. And then because we're trying to do too many things, we're split because we're trying to get everything done. And actually, if we've got too much to do, sometimes that is the only way we can do it, is to just kind of half do lots of things. But the problem with it is it's really unsatisfying. To kind of half do lots of things, we don't really feel fully in our lives, in a way. So we might need to think about, okay, what's actually important to me? What's actually important that I'm willing to kind of say, this is the thing, and drop these other things. And sometimes that isn't actually that easy. Sometimes we do genuinely have lots of things that we want to do, but then we need to wisely figure out how we're going to do that without being split and without being fragmented. But hopefully, if we carry on practicing, if we carry on meditating, we can kind of get more in touch with where our values really are, where our priorities actually really are, and it becomes more and more clear actually what we want to prioritize in our lives and what we are actually able to kind of let go of. So that is something that's a fruit that comes of meditating as well. And yeah, if we're finding that we're easily distracted, if we're finding that we're quite often pulled towards lots of different things, we just need to ask ourselves, am I actually enjoying what I'm doing? Am I actually enjoying being here? Is this what I want to do? So you can kind of, if you're having a conversation with someone and you're just like not there, I'm sure you've had situations like this where you're talking to someone, you're really actually not interested in their conversation, so it's hard to give them your full awareness. And if you notice that's what's happening, you need to be wise in that situation. So it's like, what can I actually do to make this more enjoyable so that I can fully give my attention to this person? And it might actually just be something like, oh, I just need to be more in touch with my emotions and then I'll actually want to connect with them. Or it might be, oh, I do need to redirect this because actually I'm not finding this satisfying, and if I want to be in dialogue with this person, I'm going to need to find it satisfying. Yeah, so we might need to be wise with that. Or say with a job, if we're really not enjoying it, if day to day we're having to turn up to something that we're really not enjoying, it's going to be really hard to stay skillful in relation to that. It's going to be really hard to carry on acting positively in a situation that every day we're really not enjoying. So we either need to find ways to get enjoyment out of it, or we need to think about what can I do to change things so that I'm enjoying my day-to-day more. Because if we're in this alienated awareness day to day to day, it has a really kind of grinding down and numbing effect on the mind and on the heart. And it's not just, so say if we're really, really hating our job, it's not just that we don't enjoy the time there, it's that because the alienated awareness has ground us down so much, we won't be able to enjoy ourselves in the evening or on the weekends either. So it's really important, this area of alienated awareness can be really insidious to living a satisfying life. So we kind of need to really be on the lookout for where it is and thinking, how can I act in a way, or how can I do things where I'm really more involved with what I'm doing. So the next bit that I want to talk about is basically like body movement and body language. So the Buddha really exhorted us to bring awareness to every single movement of the body. So anything that we're doing, any sort of movement or action, or like things that we're doing with the body, to bring awareness to them. And this is so that we can continue this development of awareness outside of meditation. I kind of keep emphasizing this. This is kind of like, it's really important when developing awareness in meditation. But realistically, we're not going to be able to meditate throughout our whole day. Kind of like even someone with a really strong meditation practice would find it hard to meditate for more than an hour or 2 hours a day because there's so many other things to do. So it's really important that we're developing this awareness throughout our whole day. So with body movement, I think it's an interesting thing because it mirrors the mind. So the way that we do things with our body actually shows up the state of mind that we're in. So if we observe the way that we're moving, if we observe the way that we're acting with the body, it's often mirroring and reflecting our mental states. So what we can do is we can observe the way that we're acting with our body, and this can be a mirror and this can be a reflection, so we can see what sort of mental states we're in. And it also affects the mind as well. So kind of the body, the way that we're moving the body is an expression of the mind, but also the way we move affects the mind. So the quality of the movement that we do, the speed of the movement that we do, all have an effect on the mind as well. So it's kind of mirroring the mind, it's an expression of the mind, but it also influences the mind. So on one of the things that I noticed, well actually I didn't notice it to start off with, I was on a retreat and I was sharing a room with my friend, and this was quite a long retreat, so we're a few weeks in, and at some point he just said to me, he's like, can I point something out? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he was like, you rush everywhere. It's kind of like the bell goes and within seconds you're shooting there, and around the retreat centre you're like marching like you're in a rush everywhere. And it's like, we've literally got nothing to do. we're meditating, eating, sitting around doing nothing, and you're just rushing everywhere. And he said something quite astute. He was like, I wonder, and this kind of like, he's like, I wonder what effect it's, I wonder where that's coming from, and I wonder what effect it's having. Which I thought was it was a really astute observation, because it was basically a manifestation of a restless mind. So my mind was feeling restless, and I wasn't really aware of this. I wasn't really aware that I had this residual restlessness in my mind, but it was coming out through the way that I was moving my body, so that I was kind of rushing everywhere, even though it's kind of like the bell goes and you've got 7 minutes to get a few steps away, but I was kind of like rushing everywhere. So that was kind of an expression of this restless mind, but also it was exacerbating it. So the fact that I was then moving in that way, it was then having an effect on the mind of making me more restless. So it's kind of this vicious cycle of kind of like a restless mind moving quickly, and the moving quickly making it feel more restless. So the rest of that retreat, I really just tried to move much more slowly. Like the bell would go and I'd be like, all right, I'll just sit here for a minute. Like people getting up around me. I thought, no, I'm just going to sit here. And it was interesting because I could then see my mind kind of, I could see the restlessness trying to make me move. But I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And actually after a while, the restlessness stopped. I was able to just sit there and realize, oh, I'm not actually in a rush. And then as I was moving, I just moved much more slowly, and I would just feel that it would have an effect on the mind. And I kind of still catch myself, like, so I was just on a solitary, and quite often I'll like go for a walk and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll take in the nature, and like within 5 minutes I'll find myself like marching along and then be like, oh no, I don't need to do that, and then just try and walk much slower. And I can feel the effect that it has on the mind. So yeah, we need to be aware of the movements of the body, and we can use that information to help us see what's going on in our mind, but also influence it in a more positive direction. So yeah, we can use the body to use like actions of the body to influence our mental states as well. So one way of thinking about meditation is it's working on the mind with the mind. So you kind of say meditation is directly working on the mind. Whereas when we do things with our body, it's as if we're indirectly working on the mind. So we're doing things that will then have an effect on the mind. So we want to be working on the mind in all of these different ways. We don't want to be giving up directly working on the mind and just doing things with the body. But also we don't want to then not be making advantage of the rest of the day when we can indirectly work on the mind through the things that we're doing. So if we've got like a sluggish mind, if we're feeling a bit low and a bit kind of sleepy and lethargic, we can move quicker to try and give us some energy. We can kind of try and get some energy going with our movements. But if we do have a restless mind, if we have an anxious mind, we can try and move slower to really kind of calm it down. And different exercises have different effects on the mind as well. So it's good to be aware of what exercise does and what different effect that it has. So I find running is really energizing, but it kind of makes my energy go up quite a lot, and I can get quite like frazzy. That's not a word, but hopefully it kind of, you get an idea. But then say like doing yoga or something, it's kind of like calms me down a lot more. But even that, there's like different ways to do it. So yes, it's good to be aware of the things that we're doing with the body and notice what effect it has on the mind, and then we can use that to help us move the mind in the direction that we want to go in. And the only other thing to say on this is kind of related to this, it's about body language as well. So the way that we sit, the way that we kind of stand, these all have an effect on the mind as well. And this kind of relates to kind of meditation posture as well. So say if we're kind of like slumped out on the sofa, just like that has a very different effect on the mind for if we like kind of sit upright and sit kind of like poised. And it's not that there's anything wrong if you don't need to do anything and actually you want to kind of veg out. Not that Buddhist speaking, vegging out isn't ever positive, but sometimes we might feel we need to do that. We can do that with the body, but it's just to be aware of the effect that it will have. If we're trying to do something serious, if we're trying to really set our mind to something, actually the way that we sit, what we do with our posture will have an effect on that. And that's why in meditation it's really important that we have a good posture. I said in the body scan at the beginning about how I don't know if I did say that today. Maybe I said that another day. Anyway, the posture that we have, even the posture alone, has an effect on the mind. So having like this strong grounded base, having this kind of upright, dignified, relaxed upper half of the body, that has an effect on the mind. And that in itself makes us move in the direction of meditation. So meditation posture is really important for working on the mind as well. So they're like the two aspects of it. So yeah, kind of like how we're moving and the body language, the posture that we're holding, having an effect on the mind. Right. So we're going to move on now. So this is kind of the body we've looked at the body to develop awareness. Now to finish, we're going to look at the body in relation to wisdom. So how can we use awareness of the body to become more wise, to see how things actually are much more clearly? So I'm going to read out a section now from the Satipatthana Sutta. So this is so this is a section from a bit later on in the sutta. So again, this is the Buddha speaking to a group of monks. Again, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu reviews this same body, however it is placed, however disposed, as consisting of elements thus. In this body, there is the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. Just as though a skilled butcher or his apprentice has killed a cow and was seated at the crossroads with it cut up into pieces, so too a bhikkhu reviews this same body as consisting of the elements thus. In this body there are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element. Okay. Got pretty gruesome imagery in that paragraph, doesn't it? But so yeah, it's got this traditional image of the butcher kind of cutting up a cow and obviously putting it into the different parts. Now it's not the Buddha isn't encouraging this. The Buddha definitely said don't harm beings, but it would be something that an Indian from 2,600 years ago would regularly see. So the Buddha often uses imagery from the time of the Buddha to kind of get his teachings across. So that's something that people would regularly see. And yeah, it's kind of like separating out the different parts of the body. And he's saying just like that, our body is made up of these different elements. So I'll kind of talk us through. So first there's kind of earth element. Now earth element, what this would be talking about is kind of like bones, muscle, skin, hair, teeth, nails. It's kind of that sort of area. So those parts of the body. Water is kind of like blood, sweat, tears, pus, etc. The fire element is kind of the heat, the warmth of the body. And finally air is kind of the air and the gases and the oxygen and carbon dioxide, etc. in the body. So that's how, if we were looking at the body, we'd separate it up. But from a Buddhist perspective, the elements aren't how we're used to talking about it in the Western world. So I'll just say a little bit about what Buddhism actually means by the elements. So from a Buddhist perspective, they aren't kind of fixed basic building blocks of our experience. They're basically processes that happen that make up our world. So there's kind of like the process of earth element, the process of water element, the process of fire and air. And these things, they're not basic substances, they're not fixed, they're just like a constant process that's happening. And when in Buddhism, what this is talking about here, this is talking about, it uses the word rupa, and rupa basically means form. The translation is form. So one translation is form, but another translation, and this is getting fairly technical here, so stay with me, but it's the objective content of the perceptual situation. So it's kind of the objective content of the perceptual situation. So basically we have this experience of perception, we have this experience of awareness, and we are aware of things. And in this perceptual situation, there is a subject and there is an object. Yeah, so we have a subjective experience and we have an objective, and there's an object of our experience. And what this is talking about here, rupa, is talking about the objective part of that experience. So any sort of perception has these two poles. There's the objective part of the perceptual situation, and then there's the subjective part that is our mind coming into contact with that. Yes, does that make sense? There's an object of awareness, and there's a subject perceiving it, or there's a perceived subject perceiving it, and how we're interpreting it. So that's kind of the situation that we find ourselves in. And all of these elements are, from a Buddhist perspective, these elements are objects of perception. So when it talks about earth element, what it's actually talking about is anything solid. Yeah, so like anything that when we come into contact with it, there's resistance, there's hard. So it's not necessarily talking about dirt. Well, it would be talking, but it's not earth as in kind of dirt and grass. Like that would be included in that, but it's anything solid. So kind of this microphone solid, this bowl solid. It's kind of it's the experience of solidity, the experience of resistance in our experience. And then there's water, which is the experience of fluidity. So we'll come up against things that kind of we come into contact with it, we can feel it, but that we move through it. Yes, that's the experience of fluidity. And then fire, the fire element is radiation. So it's something where as we get closer to it, it gets hotter. As we get further away, it gets cooler. So it's like the experience of heat. Air is kind of the experience of kind of expansiveness, or kind of there's movement, but it kind of you can kind of feel it going against you. So there's all of these different experiences that we have, and these are how we come into contact with the world. And so they're basically earth element, water element. These are just labels that we apply to these experiences. Now, if we really look at our experience, this is how we experience all things. Anything of form, this is how we experience it. But we can't actually know what they are objectively, because all there is this perceptual situation. There's kind of a subject, there's a perceived subject perceiving objects. We can't actually know what something is objectively. All we can know is our perception of it. So in a way, all of these elements, they're a mystery to us. They're kind of actually what they are is a mystery to us. And Buddhism refers to these, it kind of brings out this mystery as the great ghosts. So they're called the Maha Bhuttas, which means great ghosts. And Maha means great, Bhuttas means ghosts. So these are the great ghosts. So they're things that we kind of come into contact with, but we can't be sure what they are at their deepest level. But we do know that we experience them. So our body is made up of these different elements. Our body is made up of things that are solid. It's made up of things that are fluid. It's made up of heat. It's made up of air. All of these things are what make up the form of our body. And because we think of this body as us, what Buddhism teaches us, what Buddhism is pointing at, is that we cling to things. So because we think the body is us, we cling to it, and that clinging makes us suffer. So this is kind of the fundamental teaching of Buddhism, is that clinging, craving and clinging are what make us suffer. So we perceive these elements here as me, as us, and because we do that, we want to protect it, we want to preserve it, and we want to enhance it. And so we cling to it, and we try and do those things. We crave things that we think will enhance us and protect us, and we push things away that we think are going to harm us. But the problem with this clinging is it makes us suffer. But what Buddhism's saying is that actually there's nothing to cling on to. There's nothing here that we can actually cling on to. Now that's not saying that it's not saying that we don't experience things. It's not saying that we don't actually experience having a body. But what it's saying is the body is not what we think it is. And if we investigate these different elements, if we investigate these different elements in our experience, we'll see that they aren't actually us. So with the earth element, we have this experience of solidity, but we can actually see, this earth element in here is completely dependent on earth element out there. Kind of like I eat food, it becomes my body. At some point it passes through my body. My skin falls out, my hair falls out. So actually, what part of that is me? So I think it's something like every 7 years we have a completely new body or something. I think I heard that once. So it's kind of the earth element in our body is completely impermanent. It comes in, and then at some point all of it's different. So there's nothing fixed and there's nothing permanent in the earth element in our body. It's just constantly going through us. So we cling to it as if it's fixed and as if it's solid, but there isn't actually anything fixed there. It's a complete process. And it's like the reflection is that this experience of solidity here isn't actually any different from the experience of solidity out there. So why do I cling to this and why do I not cling to that? And it's the same with all of these things. So water comes in and it leaves. It comes in and it leaves. So there's nothing actually in the water element that's us. Heat emerges from the body, it radiates out. We kind of keep heat in with clothes and with temperature, but then it leaves again. There's nothing actually in heat that's us. And with air as well, it comes in and it goes out. It comes in, it gives us oxygen, and then it leaves as something else. So there's no permanent air in the body. So when the Buddha said to kind of divide our experience into that way, and then when we divide the body into that way, we can see, there isn't actually anything me in all of those things. But it's not saying that we don't experience them. It's just that they're not permanent the way that we think they are. It's not separate from everything else the way that we think they are. And so if we reflect on that, what happens is the clinging lessens. We cling to the body less, and then we're more freed up. There's just more freedom and less suffering. So it releases the clinging, and there's more of a sense of a lightness. And eventually kind of the boundary that we place on self and other starts to soften and starts to dissolve, and we start to see that actually we're not separate from everything else. We're not completely independent from everything. We're actually part of nature. So that's the kind of the letting go part of it sounds like the kind of the experience of it isn't negative, but it sounds kind of the more like the negative, like we're losing stuff. But actually what happens is we start to feel more and more connected with the rest of the world. We feel more and more like, we're actually part of nature. We're not separate from it. We're just part of this process that we call life. Yeah, so that's how awareness of the body can lead to wisdom. So we can look into it and we can start to see, I'm actually not as separate from everything else than I thought, and it's not as permanent as I thought. So I'll leave it there. I'll just kind of summarize what we've looked at today. So we started off by talking about spiritual life starting with awareness. So it's important that we're developing awareness, we're developing mindfulness, and all the other qualities will flow from there. And the Buddha exhorted us to be fully aware in everything that we do. So we need to be developing awareness in meditation, but we also need to be developing awareness in the rest of our lives as well, bringing awareness to all of our actions. We want to move away from an alienated and fragmented awareness, and we want to bring our emotions more and more into our life, more and more into everything that we do. And yeah, we talked about how body movements and posture reflect the state of our minds, but they also influence our mind as well. So we can use our body to learn what's going on in the mind, but also influence it. And then finally, we looked at how developing wisdom, we can reflect that the body's just comprised of the elements, just like everything else. There's not actually anything permanent in here that we think of as me. We're just completely interdependent on the world out there. And with that, as the boundary starts to soften, we'll suffer less and we'll experience more and more connection and more freedom, essentially. So I'll leave that there. It's really nice to be here with you tonight. And yeah, so we'll be continuing this series on living with awareness for the next few weeks, and we'll be looking into how we can develop awareness in all the different parts of our lives. But yeah, really nice to see you, and then yeah, hopefully see you again. If you could help us put the mats and cushions